At precisely 3:20 a.m., August 28, 2025, one of Russia's prized war machines, a Buyan M-class warship valued at close to $80 million, sat anchored at Military Pier No. 2 in Taman's Tamanryuk Bay. This inland naval outpost, shielded by layers of defense and more than 65 miles from the nearest Ukrainian front line, was considered untouchable, a sanctuary where Moscow's commanders believed their fleet could operate without fear. The ship had only just returned from a long-range strike mission. Its deck still smelled faintly of burnt fuel and scorched metal. Below deck, crew members worked methodically to resupply the vessel, refueling tanks, initiating cooling systems, and, most crucially, reloading 8-caliber NK cruise missiles. Each missile cost over $1 million, and each had the range to hit virtually any city in Ukraine, from Odessa to Lviv, from Kharkiv to Kiev itself. On the main deck, a cluster of officers raised glasses of vodka in celebration of their successful sortie, their laughter echoing across the water. In the operations cabin, weary sailors dozed in their seats, confident that nothing could disturb them here, deep inside Russia's guarded interior waters. But less than 7 miles away, death was gliding silently toward them. Across the bay, a modest high-speed boat cut across the waves. From a distance, it looked like a simple fishing vessel, the kind locals might use to haul in herring or squid. A faded Russian tricolor sticker adorned its side. Nets and boxes sat stacked on deck. To the casual eye, it was nothing but a civilian craft. Yet inside the cockpit were 2 men who did not belong. Ukrainian Special Forces operators from the elite 73rd Naval Center. They wore cheap fishermen's jackets and imitation Russian-style caps. But hidden in the boat's rear compartment were no nets, no fish, no styrofoam boxes. Instead, 2 Beaver model FPV suicide drones lay waiting. These were no ordinary drones. Each was outfitted with a heavy armor-piercing warhead weighing nearly 8 pounds, advanced night vision optics, and internal inertial navigation systems designed to operate without GPS. In the dark, they resembled birds of prey folded tight, waiting for the moment to strike. And that moment was approaching fast. Within minutes, this shabby little fishing boat would transform into a mobile launch pad for one of the boldest naval raids Ukraine had ever attempted. The target was formidable. The Buyan M was not a massive battleship bristling with helicopters or long-range missile defense systems, but its compact design made it just as dangerous. Purpose-built for shallow waters like the Caspian or the Azov, the ship could disappear into narrow channels and yet still launch devastating cruise missile strikes hundreds of miles away. Every time it left Tamanryuk's port, Ukraine's major cities held their breath, uncertain whether a power grid, a fuel depot, or even a school might be the next target. Kiev's planners had grown tired of waiting for the next strike. They chose to move first. The problem, however, was immense. Tamanryuk was no ordinary harbor. It was a floating fortress wrapped in layers of air defense. A Pantsir S-1 missile system stood watch, capable of shredding incoming aircraft or drones within seconds. Nearby, Podlet K-1 radar stations rotated endlessly, casting invisible nets across the skies. Every frequency, every direction, every approach was under constant surveillance. To Russian commanders, this meant absolute security. No UAV could possibly get close. But Ukraine's operatives knew differently. They had studied the radar arcs and the limitations of Russia's defenses. They had discovered a narrow blind zone, the few feet of space just above the water's surface. Radars weren't optimized to sweep that low, especially not when waves and sea clutter created interference. It was a seam in the armor, so thin it seemed insignificant. Yet it was through this seam that Ukraine's weapon would slip, silent and unseen. At 3:27 a.m., the boat eased closer, now just 3 miles from the target. brushing the edge of the surveillance ring. The soldiers worked quickly. They pulled away the gray tarps covering the compartment, revealing the two UAVs. Each drone was 4 feet long, its fiberglass body painted in dull matte gray, with wings spreading more than 5 feet across. Designed to be ultralight, with minimal heat signature, they were ghosts in the night. The men armed the warheads, powered the inertial modules, and synchronized their attack codes. Their plan was precise: 2 separate drones, 2 separate approach vectors, 2 critical targets. The first drone, codenamed Thunder, would fly directly toward the radar mast, severing the ship's eyes and ears. The second, named Vidplata, or Retribution, would strike amidships, aiming for the Kaliber missile launchers. If the first succeeded in blinding the vessel, the second would have a clean path to drive into its exposed heart. At 3:29 a.m. and 12 seconds, the first drone was launched. With a whine, its electric motor roared to life, propellers slicing the night air. It skimmed just feet above the water, racing forward. 40 seconds later, the second drone followed. From here on, the boat's mission was over. The outcome now lay with 2 unmanned machines guided only by algorithms, cameras, and the determination of the soldiers watching from afar. Hundreds of miles away in a bunker near Zaporizhzhia, a UAV operator leaned toward a glowing black and white monitor. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the control stick. On the screen, the radar tower of the Buyan M loomed larger with every second. The readout ticked closer. 950 feet, 800, 650. Still no response from the ship. Its radar kept rotating, oblivious to the threat closing in fast. The operator whispered a silent count in his head. 5, 4, 3. At 3:31 a.m. and 25 seconds, a blinding flash erupted. The drone slammed into the radar mast. A sheet of fire shot outward, spraying sparks across the deck. The mast cracked, its antenna sheared clean off and hurled into the sea. Circuits shorted, processors fried, smoke poured from the control center. In less than a second, the Buyan M, once a lethal precision strike platform, was blinded, unable to see, unable to guide, stripped of its tactical awareness. Panic spread across the crew. The commander barked orders, shouting for diagnostics. Officers scrambled through the haze. Reports came back broken and hopeless. Primary radar destroyed. Sensors fried. Electronic warfare suspected. Their only lifeline was the Pantsir system, but it required manual activation. And the control cabin, already ripped open by the blast, was uninhabitable. A radar officer collapsed, chest pierced by shrapnel. Others struggled through smoke and debris. The vessel's defenses were in chaos, just as the second threat approached. In the hours that followed, a ripple of panic spread across the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Within minutes of confirming the Buyan M's crippling damage, commanders issued urgent orders to reposition other vessels anchored along the coast. Support ships, patrol craft, and even supply barges hastily shifted course, retreating deeper into secured harbors. What had once been considered a safe rear area now felt like a trap waiting to be sprung. Officers who once boasted about the impenetrability of Tamanrayuk Bay now spoke in hushed tones, fearful that the same fate could befall their own decks. For the first time, Russia's sailors understood that the sea they thought they controlled had turned into hostile waters, where every ripple on the surface might conceal another silent killer. 6 seconds later, Vidplata came screaming in from the port side, hugging the water at nearly 100 miles per hour. Its camera feed captured every detail of the ship's central deck, the rectangular hatches of the missile launch bays, heat signatures glowing from within. One hatch, Bay 3, was already open, a missile inside in pre-launch readiness. That was the bullseye. The drone angled in, wings slicing the mist. At exactly 3:32 a.m., it drove straight into the open bay. The explosion was catastrophic. The hatch blew apart, metal fragments showering the deck. Flames surged upward, followed by black smoke billowing into the night sky. Steel plating warped and buckled. Fire suppression systems kicked on, spraying bursts of carbon dioxide across the inferno. But the blaze had already spread into the secondary electrical bay, incinerating the launch control module. Adjacent missile cells began to overheat dangerously, threatening a chain reaction. As the flames consumed the Buyan-M, the silence that followed wasn't peace. It was terror. Russian sailors across the Black Sea stared at their radar screens, knowing that the next ghost on the horizon could be coming for them. The drones were invisible until the final seconds, unstoppable once detected, and relentless in their hunt. Every creak of steel, every shadow on the water, felt like death approaching. The mighty Russian fleet, once the predator, was now the prey. The ship listed to starboard, tilting 3 to 5 degrees, a clear sign of flooding in the compartments below. Officers shouted for emergency seals, scrambling to contain the damage. Yet the vessel was no longer a warship. Its radar was gone, its missile launchers destroyed, its command modules crippled. 7 minutes after the first strike, the Buyan-M transmitted a broken distress call across the UHF military band. Warship B-38 attacked, radar damaged, missile system destroyed, request immediate support, require tow to base. The pride of Russia's Azov fleet had been reduced to a smoldering hulk. The Buyan-M had been the Kremlin's workhorse in these waters, its shallow draft perfect for slipping through channels and unleashing long-range strikes. Now it was crippled. Hours later, Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Directorate released footage of the attack. The video showed the first drone slamming into the radar mast, flames engulfing the tower. Seconds later, the second drone plowed into the deck, sending smoke curling skyward. Naval experts confirmed the footage, and international outlets, from Naval News to Business Insider, authenticated it. The consequences were immediate. The warship was forced to limp back to Sevastopol for repairs, likely to be sidelined for weeks if not months. Analysts noted that the cost of Ukraine's entire operation was less than 1% of the price of the vessel it had disabled. For Kyiv, it was a textbook asymmetric victory. For Moscow, it was a humiliation. The attack shattered the illusion of safety in Tamanrayuk Bay. What Russia had believed to be a steel fortress had been breached not by million-dollar missiles, but by drones costing less than $2,000 apiece. And this was not an isolated incident. Ukraine had been perfecting this method of warfare for months. In 2024, improvised drones crippled a Sergei Kotov-class patrol ship off Crimea. That same year, a landing vessel was sunk outright. Just weeks before this strike, a drone had even targeted an offshore oil rig used as a radar station, proving no installation was beyond reach. These operations marked a turning point in naval warfare. They were not random acts of desperation, but carefully planned assaults, rehearsed and executed with precision. The drones were small, cheap, and expendable, but when deployed with intelligence and coordination, they became weapons capable of rewriting the balance of power. For Russia's Black Sea Fleet, they were a nightmare, a threat that never slept, never hesitated, and could strike from anywhere. From this moment forward, every Russian vessel operating in the Azov Sea faced a new reality. Whether a Buyan-M, a Cerna-class landing craft, or even a logistics ship, each had to contend with the knowledge that at any moment, out of the darkness, a low-flying drone could slip past their defenses and bring fire straight to their decks.